It all began with one shot. With one shot, the concert of Europe, which had kept the European continent relatively peaceful, would end. The great era of peace and prosperity would lead into the greatest war the world had yet to see. World War I.
Fortunately, the United States didn't get involved at first. There were a few senators like Republican Henry Cabot Lodge, but at this time, there was a general consensus among the public and the government that European affairs were to stay European. Unfortunately, the war in Europe was inevitable. The assassination led to a war in Europe on a scale no one had yet to see. Thousands were stuck in trenches, thousands had to leave their homes, millions were affected, and unrestricted submarine warfare ravaged the Atlantic oceans. The world was in a state of international chaos.
Fortunately, for years, the United States was able to stay out of these wars and retain neutrality. America realized that it could sell weapons to both sides of the war in the initial stages of the war and prospered greatly from the weapons trade. Unfortunately, the restricted submarine war could bring an end to the American peace. The Lusitania, a British ship carrying Americans, would be sunk by a German U-boat. This tragedy woke up a sleeping giant. The United States would remain out of a war for a few more weeks following this incident, but now it was wide awake and ready to go to war at any time. Fortunately for the Americans, they would be able to avoid a second tragedy. The Zimmerman telegram, a message from the Germans to the Mexicans saying that if Mexico entered the war, Germany would help Mexico regain its lost lands from the Americans, was picked up by the British, who sent it directly to the United States. America now realized the only way out was to fight. Unfortunately, this meant that the United States had to enter the war. Mexico, despite its political instability at the time, was not a force to be reckoned with, even for the United States. America had to enter the war and cut the route to this potential problem. Fortunately, America had allies they could rely on. This included Great Britain, France, Italy, and Japan. Additionally, with the passage of the Draft Act, America had an army that was ready to go. Unfortunately, the war had high casualties, lasting as one of America's deadliest wars. Moreover, this was really the first time in the nation's history that so much American blood was spilled overseas. It was a tragedy for all.
Fortunately, the Treaty of Versailles would end the war with President Wilson. The war, which had killed and displaced so many, was now over. We know from history that the Treaty of Versailles would end up catastrophically failing. The Great Depression of the 1930s, the stock market crash of 1929, and the rise of fascism are all linked to the failure of the Treaty of Versailles.
Fortunately, at least for a decade, America would be in peace. European issues would continue on, but because America had not entered the League of Nations, it had no ties, no reason to get involved. In the end, the most significant immediate outcome of the United States participating in the World War was prosperity. Economic growth in the 1920s, commonly referred to as the Roaring Twenties, would begin as the American economy machine seemed to be invincible. We would also see a lot of prospering progressive ideas continue on, most notably the passing of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. Hence, following the Great War, the United States would come out with an immediate prospering economy and society.